Hey, what's up everybody? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this video we finally get to look at the NECA quarter scale or 18-inch Master Chief. It's not technically quarter scale because he's only about 18 inches tall, so let's just call him the 18-inch Chief, which is fine by me. I'm not really worried about the scale, especially for a figure this big. That's fine. So first of all, it's really big, so I'm just going to kind of point out most of the articulation first and talk about some stuff, and then I'll actually grab it and move around to the front of the camera so you guys can see the articulation in action. Now, another thing I want to point out is they did a really good job of hiding most of his articulation, so I'm not 100% sure on some of the specifics as far as double ball pegs and single ball pegs and that sort of thing. But when I show you how the articulation actually functions, that should clear up enough of it so you know what you're looking at. Okay, so first of all, the head is at least on a single ball peg. I think, though, it's technically a double ball peg, the way the head can move back and forth, and like I said, I'll show you that. Each of the shoulders have a lateral or a horizontal butterfly joint, which allows the shoulders to come forward so he can put his arm across his chest a little bit better. And then the shoulder itself is just a standard style ball hinge. There is a bicep swivel underneath the bicep armor, so that's pretty handy. There's no articulation for the shoulder pads, and I'll explain that when I get to that point. The elbows are double hinged. It's a really, really nice design for those double hinged elbows, though it looks so good when it's in use. There is a swivel in the forearm, so you can turn that armor around however you need to. Both of the wrists, well, all of the wrists have a hinge, and then of course it's a peg, so a swivel as well. There is some sort of joint in the diaphragm region, which is right underneath this part of the armor. I can't quite figure out what it is. I think it might just be a ball peg, but it doesn't want to move the way I think it should, so I'm not positive on that. There's a waist twist for the lower torso, which is right underneath here. The hips are basically just like your Marvel Legends hips. They're ball hinges, so they can go outside to side, front to back, and then there's a thigh swivel underneath that ball hinge. This plastic is soft and this plastic is soft, so you can get pretty good range of motion out of it. No real issues there. The knees are double hinged. It's a really good design for the knees as well, so I'll get to that later. And then for the ankles, it's a ball peg with pretty good range of motion, so you get an ankle rocker out of it and you can bring it forward and back. Really anything you need to do, it's good enough. You're not going to put him in the most dynamic of poses like Spider-Man, but it'll certainly be enough for Master Chief. And then lastly, there's a swivel at the toe, so you can use that a little bit more to help the ankle rocker articulation. As far as what he comes with, he has a fist for his right hand, which is this right here, obviously. Nicely sculpted. Love the texturing they're able to do since it's a larger scale figure. Nicely painted, so we have the fist. Excuse me. Obviously, we have the hand for holding guns. For the right hand, the trigger hand, we have the same thing for the left. If you want to put his pistol in that hand, you can do that. And then, of course, we have the secondary hand to support the rifle, or the pistol technically. And then, of course, we have the pistol, which has the peg in it for putting it on his hip, or the peg hole, and then it comes with 3 weapons pegs. You really only need 2, so I'm guessing they just gave us one as a spare, which is always nice. And the assault rifle also has a hole in it for the peg. The cool thing about the assault rifle, other than it looks really good, is that this little, what's that called? Whatever, I can't think of it right now, guys. I haven't been sleeping thanks to Halo coming out recently, so you'll have to excuse my lack of knowledge. It actually, oh, you know what? That makes more sense. I just realized this. I remember I thought of it yesterday and didn't remember that I thought of it. There's 2 holes in the rifle for the spare peg and the regular peg, and that's because you can peg them both in on his back at the same time to support it. I remember when I first got it, I was thinking that they just gave us an extra peg, and I forgot that I figured out why. It's not really extra, it's just for more support. Okay, excuse me. So this is a soft piece of plastic, so that won't break off. That's what I was getting at. Okay, so now I'm going to move around to the front a little bit and talk about the articulation, and hopefully you guys can see what I'm talking about. These big figures always pose a little bit of a problem when reviewing, just because they're so darn big. And I'll give you a size comparison at the end of the video also. So the head, it kind of works like the DC Universe Classics heads, where it's got a down position and then you can kind of bring it back like that, and then you can make it look around at the top. It's really stiff, but I don't really think there's much risk of breaking it, so you don't have to worry about that too much. So it's a full ball peg on the top of that joint, so you can move it side to side, up and down, but then if you really want to move it down, you have to put it in that other position where you can move it around from there. So you shouldn't really have too much trouble posing him. You can look down really well, looks up pretty well. You really should be able to get him posed, no problem at all. And technically the whole upper torso, all the armor, is a softer plastic, and it's not connected everywhere, so you don't really have to worry about bouncing the head against the chest piece here or anything, because it'll just move or give. I don't think you have to worry about scratches all that much. Excuse me. Okay, now for the shoulders, I'll show you the butterfly joint first. That comes out about that far, so that's going to allow him to bring his arm across his chest fairly well. It's really, really well done. They did a good job with that butterfly joint. Of course, it does create a cavity in the back, but don't look at it from the back and you'll be okay. They can't really do anything about that. This part of the undersuit here is a separate piece that hides the articulation, and it increases the range of motion for the shoulder joint, so that's pretty good. And then, like I said, it's just a standard ball hinge on the outside of that butterfly joint, so you can bring the arm pretty much as high up as you want, like that, just using that joint. And of course, if you rotated it, you can get it up even higher. So that works really well. Really no range of motion problems at all with the shoulder. Like I said, we have a bicep swivel down here underneath the shoulder hinge. Bicep swivels underneath the armor. I do wish the bicep armor was a little bit bigger. I think it's probably a little bit bigger in game, but that's not a huge deal. I'm assuming they just did that for the sake of articulation. And then the other issue is the shoulder armor, while it's on this tab that allows it to move around and not get in the way really, I would have much rather had it on like a double ball peg so we could actually pose it the way we wanted it to help us with the, once we get it into a pose, to get it the way we want. And then another thing that would have been handy, now these are all just things that would have been cool, but obviously they can only do so much at the price point they have, is if the shoulder, or I mean the bicep armor and the shoulder pad were independently swiveling. So you could rotate the arm and then swivel the shoulder back so that this doesn't get in the way quite as much. Like for example, if you wanted to bring the arm across like this, if you could swivel this around down a little bit more to get the shoulder armor away from the chest, that would have been really handy, but that's obviously not a big deal. It's just something that would have been cool. Now for the elbow articulation, you can only see one joint from the side, and that's because this first joint is what you're going to use to get most of the articulation. And then there's a second joint inside the forearm that allows the arm to come up like this, and it gives it a really nice and organic look. It gives him better than 90 degrees, almost 45 degrees. So really good range of motion on that, and it does look really good too. Very well designed. Might be the best elbow design I've seen on a figure, so that's pretty impressive. And then, like I said, for the torso articulation, I'm not sure what's going on at this upper joint. I can't really see inside. I know it can swivel some, but it doesn't really want to hold the pose. I'm not sure. I think I might just have to loosen it up, and it's probably just a ball peg. And then it feels like it can move forward and back more than it is, but right now it's only a little bit. So I'm going to have to play around with that and see what happens. So far I haven't been able to get much out of that. I'm pretty sure it's just stuck, kind of like the head. It's really stiff, but once you get it going, it works fine. So that's what I'm counting on for the torso. And then for the lower torso, we have a swivel that works just fine. No issues at all there. Very well hidden, very seamless, so that's good. And now for the hips. Just like I said, it's kind of like a Marvel Legends figure, standard ball hinge. You can see the ball hinge if you rotate the hip around. This cap does a really good job of hiding it. And then you can see from looking at the bottom, hopefully you can see the disc in there that actually allows the hip to move to the side. So we have the full ratcheting forward and back. Really good range of motion, by the way. You can get it up that high. Since it's ratcheted, you have to find the sweet spot because it will just play at that ratchet. Same thing for the knee. I'll talk about that in a second. So once you find the spot, though, it'll hold in place just fine. And then, of course, you can bring the hip out as far as you want to the side. And these are soft, so they're not going to get in the way. Same thing for this. So it's really just a matter of finding the right position and putting them in it, because you can do whatever you need to do. And then you have the thigh swivel like I showed you already. Now for the knees, Very similar to, well, let's do it on this side. Very similar to the elbows. You get really good range of motion out of them. This is a soft piece right here, and that can fold up, but you're gonna have to be careful with how you do it, otherwise it's just gonna get kind of bunched up. You can get pretty good range of motion out of those knees though, so that's pretty good. And then they are double jointed. If you want to do the top one first, I would recommend that, and then fold up the bottom one, and you get really good range of motion out of that. And then lastly, we have the ankle articulation, which is technically just a ball peg. So it'll swivel around like that where it connects, but then you can also bring it down. It doesn't have the greatest range, but you can do it, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem. Then you can bring it up, and you can go side to side with it. Pretty much whatever you need to do, you should be able to do it. It should be enough. And then lastly, lastly, we just have the swivel right there. So that's pretty good. So now I'm going to set him down and go back behind the camera and point out a few more things. Alright, so as far as holding the weapons goes, he can hold them really well. The only thing is that you need to know, the hands are really stiff. The fingers are really stiff. You cannot get the gun in there without softening the plastic. Once you soften it, it only takes a little bit of heat. It's a really high quality plastic, so you just soften it up a little bit with a hair dryer or some water, and you'll be able to pry those fingers open no problem and get the weapons in there, pistol and rifle, no problem at all. But then once it cools, you're not going to be able to get the weapon out unless you heat the hand up again, which I'm personally okay with. It allows for a really good sculpt and allows him to hold the weapon properly, so that's fine by me. I suppose you probably want to see him holding the rifle, but I will do that in a second. First of all, I want to show you a quick size comparison. So we'll just have him standing there. This is the McFarlane standard 5 3/4 inch figure in package on the same surface. The package comes up to his waist only. The figure's tiny, obviously. This guy is massive. I mean, he really is a large scale figure. So let's go ahead and do a height measurement, even though I don't even have a high enough ruler for it. So about 12 inches to the middle of his torso right there, and then another 6 3/4 inches, so 18 3/4 inches tall. So definitely a lot of size in this guy. As far as the paint applications go, somebody said they weren't detailed enough, and obviously they could be better. You're only paying $100 for this guy, give or take, depending on where you get it, and he's humongous and really well done. So yeah, there's always room for improvement. I mean, it could cost $1,000, but I think for the price point, you absolutely cannot beat it. It looks great. There's lots of shading. The greens are all metallic. The silver spots are all metallic. We have silver up here. We have silver throughout the leg undersuit, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. Little bits throughout. Lots of nice little details throughout. The two different shades of the green look really good. And then the visor is done really well also. We have that kind of metallic, translucent look with the honeycomb. Looks great. Perfectly happy. It's smooth on the outside, so the honeycomb is inside. It's a separate layer. You can see all the different shades of green in the armor, particularly on the shoulder and arm. I don't know. I think personally you really can't get more for your money than you can with this figure. It's so well done. The articulation is there. The sculpt is there. Obviously the sculpt is great on this guy. Looks awesome. And then the paints are, I think, are more than enough. So not really too much to complain about here. I think this is definitely something you must have if you're a Halo fan. It looks really good. Probably the best rendition or iteration of Master Chief that we've gotten to date. So let me put the gun in a firing position so you can see how that works, and that, you'll kind of see what I'm talking about with the shoulder pad, how it would have been nice if it had a little bit extra range of motion, but it's not, certainly not a necessary type of thing. You can get the gun around no problem at all. And this is just me throwing it into place really, so you can do even better if you're actually trying to. You can just see how simple it is and how decent the articulation is to have him holding his weapon. Really, they did a great job with it. Like I said, that is just a really quick, sloppy pose, but it works just fine. Now for the shoulder, the only thing I was talking about was that instead of having that tab that holds this in place, a little bit of a double ball peg to get us to kind of rotate this around and down a little bit would have been nice, but it's certainly not a must-have. It still works really well, looks really good, can't complain. Let me get the camera in a better angle so that you can see this a little bit better. And I don't know if I'll even be able to take photos of this guy because I don't have a backdrop that's really big enough. I'll try to get some photos up and I'll put them at the end of the video if I have the ability to. If not, then you'll just see the end credit roll and that'll be that. And that's probably as good as it's going to go. My tripod's not going to go any higher without taking considerable time. So there it is, guys. I'm going to call it a wrap there. And I will throw up a couple of photos at least. So forget what I said. I'll put up a couple. They just may not be full body shots. So there it is, guys. The NECA 18 3/4 inch Master Chief. Absolutely great figure. Couldn't be happier with it. Definitely recommend it 100%. Probably my favorite figure in my collection at this point. Very, very well done. Kudos to NECA. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you subscribe to my channel for my upcoming figure reviews, custom figures, and other good stuff. And in the meantime, keep collecting.